The Committee on Public Education will come to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Chair Buckley,
Here.
Vice Chair Allen,
Present.
Allison,
Here.
Cunningham,
Here.
Dutton,
Here.
Harris,
Here.
Harrison,
Here.
Hefner,
Here.
Hinojosa, King,
Here.
Longoria,
Here.
Schaefer, Talarico.
Okay. A quorum is present. Members, before we begin today's agenda, we do have one housekeeping measure related to correcting the minutes from last week's hearing. The chair moves to correct the minutes for the meeting held on March 14th. Is there objection? The chair hears none and the motion prevails. Thank you, members. Now we're going to move on to today's agenda, which is going to be lengthy. As a reminder, anyone present wishing to testify before the committee, please register at the kiosks located in the hallways behind the hearing rooms. If you require assistance in registering or testifying, please speak with the committee staff. Please be aware there will be a limit of 3 minutes per witness during the public testimony period. As a reminder to the committee and our visitors and witnesses today, under House Rule 4, Section 13, House committees are subject to the same rules of decorum that govern House proceedings. Under those rules, the chair is responsible for preserving order and decorum during committee meetings, and the chair may ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to assist in preserving order and decorum. Outbursts or vocal displays of support or opposition from visitors in the audience are prohibited, and the chair may order the Sergeant-at-Arms to clear the audience if there's a disturbance that disrupts the committee's meeting. Signs, placards, and other objects of similar nature are prohibited. Food and drink are prohibited in the hearing room, and members of the committee and witnesses must confine their remarks to the matter being considered by the committee. Chair appreciates the cooperation of the committee and our visitors in preserving order and decorum during today's hearing. With that, members, we will begin the first bill on our agenda. Chair lays out House Bill 166 and recognizes Representative Gonzalez to explain the bill. The chair will offer committee substitute.
Thanks. Thank you, Chairman. It's so glad to be back.
Welcome back.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you're treating Dr. Allen like the queen. That's lovely. Members, I'm here to lay out House Bill 166, which is a committee sub House Bill 166, which is identical to the Senate bill. It's a pretty simple bill. Right now, if you're a student with disabilities, you're allowed to be in our public education system until you're 21. But you also might need an educational representative if you're between 18 and 21. And so this bill just creates the process for us realizing or understanding that gap for kids, young people who are over the age of 18 who can't provide informed consent to make their educational decisions and have an appropriate mechanism for pursuing their rights under Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Pursuant to federal law, IDEA permits a student with disabilities to continue in their education until their 21st birthday, but when a student's receiving educational services turns 18, they do have a legal right to make educational decisions, as do their peers who do not have special needs. A student who turns 18 and is able may represent themselves in special education proceedings. However, other students can do so may choose a parent or a loved one by executing a power of attorney to have their parent or loved one represented at these proceedings. But there are those students who, with significant disabilities, who cannot represent themselves capably or even able to complete a power of attorney. So this bill, 166, sets the procedures to ensure that the civil rights of our most significantly disabled children are represented through IDEA proceedings. It's a pretty simple bill, members, and I favorably ask consideration for Committee Sub House Bill 166, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, members. Any questions for Representative Gonzalez? All right. Seeing none, we have any witnesses?
Yep, we have a few.
All right. Here we go. All right. Chair calls Mara Laviola from Texans for Special Education Reform and Texas Parent to Parent and herself. Thank you for being here today. We show you registered as Mara
Yes.
on behalf of Texans for Special Education Reform at Texas Parent to Parent. And yourself, you'll be testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Okay. Hello, my name is Mara Laviola, and I want to express my appreciation to Dr. Gonzalez for inviting me to talk today, and for all of you for listening to my story. Like Dr. Gonzalez told you, there is a void in Texas state law that does not enable 18-plus disabled students who cannot make informed educational decisions to seek legal recourse against their school district if something should happen. They can only do so with a guardianship. But most kids do not need a guardian. They just need support. Guardianship is expensive and impinges on persons' fundamental rights. This void has caused substantial harm to families like my own. Our son, Zachary, has received special education services since he was 3 due to a stroke. His primary eligibility was autism, but we were always concerned about his vision. We raised our concerns about Zachary's vision to our school district numerous times, and in numerous times they failed to evaluate. It was not until a teacher corroborated what we saw, our school district decided to evaluate. And after 18 years, we found out that our son was blind. The enormity of this educational loss for Zach became immediately apparent to us. Our son was blind, and this meant he received no education at all. The enormity also was understood by the school district as they launched a brutal and intentional assault on us. Instead of working with us, our district exploited the void in state law and challenged the right of my husband and I to bring the lawsuit on my son's behalf, and centered the entire case on our son's capacity, which had never been an issue before. It's not his eligibility and never has been, rather than the fact that the district failed to identify that he was blind. The onslaught of motions that came from the district was relentless and came with a unique brand of indignities, such as forcing Zach to undergo IQ testing, a process that is invalid for students who are blind and have autism, and which was never an issue. Reducing our musically gifted child to a single number that said nothing about him. The district even threatened to get guardianship of him. We feared that he would be stripped of all his rights and putting his hopes of college in jeopardy. This was inconceivable, as Zach is a gifted musician and under the radar of the UT Butler School of Music. But colleges do not accept children under guardianship, not even ones that are UI gold medalists and who graduate with a fine arts endorsement. This went on for over a year, and time was ticking away. We spent over $140,000 to protect our son's right to self-determination, but we couldn't keep it going. He was losing time, and it was too much. Our district successfully exploited this void by shifting the focus from serious legal violations to sideshows regarding capacity and standing that exponentially raised the cost. My son had a right to an education, and he had a right to significant compensatory services, but the district succeeded in ending all of that. He will never be heard. An educational representative would change this. It would have avoided all of this. A disability advocate once said, "Disability only becomes a tragedy when society fails to provide the things they need to live their lives." Zach's loss of an education is a tragedy. But we can prevent more tragedies in the future by providing the things they need, like HB 166. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? Okay. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Chair calls Edgar Pacheco, an advocate. Thank you for being here today. We show you registered as Edward Pacheco on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Sorry, you said
Edgar
Oh, excuse me. Let me correct that. Edgar.
Pacheco, yes, correct.
Got that?
Awesome. Members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for this opportunity to be before you again. New session, new bills, and just extremely excited to be here with you. And I just want to give you a bit of brief history on HB 166 from my perspective. I've been working on this bill as an advocate for the last year and a half already. And I started working on it when it was Senate Bill 2105 in the Senate side. Then this time around, with the help of people like MARA, Disability Rights Texas, Coalition for Texans with Disabilities, we were able to come to an agreement on the substance of the bill this time around. And today we are grateful for Representative Gonzalez's efforts to bring it before this committee. And I'm just going to go through a little bit of how the process would look like with House Bill 166. As Mara mentioned, this bill is for those students who are 18, who are still covered under the transition services. And normally when a student turns 18, their educational rights transfer over to them. When in the case of a student with a disability who might not be able to make these decisions on their own, or who might not have that capacity to do so because of their disability, the educational representative bill would come into effect. And so previously, it was called the appointment of an educational representative, which raised some concerns with some of the members on both the Senate and House side. And this time around, while I believe it's still technically called an appointment, it's really not necessarily a process, but more of a recognition that a parent or guardian or whoever stands in parental relation to that parent at that point in time will be the educational representative and continue making decisions for those students. And so what the process would look like is the student or the parent would notify the school district that there is a need for an educational representative, and with a form created by the Texas Education Agency that would then be provided to a professional who has been taking care, who has been caring for the child, whether that's a MD, whether that's a licensed clinical social worker, whether that's a psychologist, whoever the child has been receiving care from at that point in time, they would certify the need based on the diagnosis of their disability and the severity of their disability, to make decisions, and they would certify the need for an educational representative at that time. Once the doctor, physician, or whoever it may be that the professional is, fill that form certifying the need for an ed rep, then that form will then be turned back over to the school district, and the school district will promptly acknowledge and recognize the parent of a student, the guardian, or as you can see on the bill, a bit of other people in that process as well, to be the educational representative. And so the need is great because we've seen a couple of times in my personal experience as an advocate where some students may not know what they're doing, and they'll just agree and sign or put a check mark off or whatever the case may be when they're signing paperwork and agreement to an R that they don't even understand. And so that being said, I'll open up myself for any questions that you may have regarding the bill. I will say that this bill protects two types of students. It protects the students who are unable to make those decisions by themselves, and it also protects the students who at some point in time may require additional assistance, but maybe then later down the line will feel that they are ready to make these decisions on their own, which is why inside the bill there is safeguards and there is a provision that allows for the need for an educational representative to be recertified on an annual basis in order to continue making that determination with regards to the need for an educational representative. So with that, I look forward to any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, members. Any questions for this witness? All right, then.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thanks.
Chairman.
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Wow.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Jolene Sanders, Advocacy Director, Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, and on for theirself. Jolene Sanders. Okay. All right. We'll show Jolene Sanders for the bill. The chair calls Olivia Pacheco, UT Law Disability Rights Clinic. Is there enough information? I guess so, yeah.
Good morning.
Okay. Thank you for being here today. We show you registered as Olivia Pacheco on behalf of the UT Law Disability Rights Clinic.
Yes.
And you'll be testifying on the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning. So my name is Olivia Pacheco. I am one of the student directors of the Special Education Project SPEAK, which assists low-income families in advocating for full and appropriate special education services. I'm representing that project as well as the Disability Rights Clinic, in which I have been a student litigator of special education cases. Both the project and clinic are supervised by Professor Lucy Wood at UT Law. HB 166, in creating this educational representative option and recognizing as well the existing supportive decision-making agreement as an important tool where appropriate, is critical to ensuring that the IEP and the due process complaint systems are accessible to all students with disabilities, as envisioned under and required by federal special education law. The idea, our federal special education law provides that a child with a disability who has reached the age of majority under state law, who has not been determined to be incompetent, but who is determined not to have the ability to provide informed consent with respect to the educational program, shall be given procedures established by the state for appointing either the parent or another appropriate individual to represent the educational interests of that child through the period of eligibility, in this case, 18 through 21 in Texas. Although the idea requires states to set up this procedure, Texas has not yet done so. HB 166 creates these required procedures and allows for all children, all students, including those 18 through 21, to be served by the due process complaint system. HB 166 is important because it allows, again, all of our young adult students with disabilities to gain access to that free and appropriate public education. As the committee knows, primarily, we envision a collaborative process through the ARD committee, and most of what we do in SPEAK, the project that I lead, is meant to equip parents in that process. Having served hundreds of families throughout Texas with partnerships with Baylor and Dell, CASA, and other entities, we identify students whose special education needs have gone unmet. Occasionally, a few of these cases where collaboration has reached an impasse are referred to the Disability Rights Clinic, and in those cases, we help parents to file due process or administrative complaints as the next friend to their children. But because the next friend vehicle for bringing a complaint is only available to minor children, it is not an option for those over 18, the target of this bill. We thank Mara for sharing her story. I'd like to share a couple of the stories of our clients who have also would have benefit from HB 166. So one of our clients, age 20, came to us with a very strong claim that his district had violated the idea and he had fallen behind significantly as a result, both academically and socially. Because his parents were educated and had financial resources, they had obtained a guardianship prior to his coming to our clinic, and as a result, we were able to move forward, and through our work, by and through the guardian, we were able to achieve the significant compensational education that was due to him. But not all families are so fortunate. They do not have the resources. It's a lengthy, costly process, as was explained prior, to get guardianship, and that's not always what's in the best interest of our students. Many of them need an alternative option, and that's what this educational representation provides. In our second example, a young woman sought our clinic's assistance after turning 18. The collaboration at the ARD committee level had reached that impasse to get this young woman into that least restrictive environment. Part of the day with her non-disabled peers is what she was seeking. Unfortunately, we now have to give her the difficult news that because if her family seeks guardianship, she'll be in a better position to bring forward this complaint without the challenge to her capacity, but she doesn't want to go that far and take that step.
Your 3 minutes are out. Please go ahead and wrap it up. Please
Yes.
continue, but wrap it up, please.
So again, HB 166 does meet the need of a targeted population of our students to offer them the opportunity to achieve that free and appropriate public education to which they are due. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Members, questions for this witness? Thank you for being here. Appreciate
Thank
it. Okay. Just wanted to make it known that there's an overflow room in E2026. E2026. All right. Last one. All right. There it is. Yeah. Chair calls Andrea Chevalier. What does TK stand for? I ever say it. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. We show you registered as Andrea Chevalier on behalf of TCASE. Could you remind me again what that?
Yes, Texas Council of Administrators of Special Education.
All right, thank you. You'll be testifying on the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Andrea Chevalier with TCASE. We represent directors of special education in school districts, and theoretically would be the ones implementing this bill. Absolutely understand that we should have a process in place and that we do not right now for appointment of an educational representative. I have spoken with Representative Gonzalez's office, and I believe that we can work towards just a quick cleanup. So there is a section looking at SB 1225, which is the bill that was substituted for HB 166 today. There's a section page 9, line 5, that does outline a process for the district if the parent is unavailable to go through a prioritized list of other individuals to appoint as the educational representative. And we just ask that as the district personnel that would be implementing this, that we have maybe some clarification in the bill of guidelines of how the district would go about going down that list, or defining what is unavailable in terms of the parent. So just want to be clear that we appreciate this bill, but just want clarity from the district perspective and how that decision will be made, laid out in the bill.
All right, thank you. Members, any questions for this witness?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for being here. Is that it? Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 166? If not, Chair recognizes Representative Gonzalez to close on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. As you heard from the testimony, it's a needed bill to fill the gap that exists. And so with that, I close unless there's any further questions.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Wayne has a good.
The committee substitute is withdrawn, and if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 1662 and recognizes Representative Burns to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for allowing me to lay out House Bill 1662. In the 87th session, legislature passed House Bill 750, which requires school districts to post on their websites the employment policies adopted by the board, as well as the full text of any regulations referenced in the board policies. As you can imagine, school districts have any number of regulations that may affect their district employees. Since the passage of House Bill 750, though, there have been many instances where districts have failed to post these regulations on their websites. House Bill 1662 simply clarifies that the term regulation includes any written document that is issued pursuant to a delegation of authority by a school board, or any written document that implements a policy adopted by the school board. This includes compensation plans, employee leave conditions and procedures, and professional development requirements. HB 1662 also adds a sort of enforcement mechanism by providing that if a school district employee files a complaint based on a violation of a regulation, the school district cannot dismiss the grievance as untimely if they failed to post their regulations on the district website, or if they failed to provide the employee with a copy of the regulation. This bill is simply about ensuring transparency for school district employees so they have access to the regulations that affect their employment. We have a resource witness here to answer any questions you might have. Paige Williams with the Texas Classroom Teachers Association is here to answer any questions.
All right. Members, any questions for Representative Burns? Chairman Burns? All right. If there are no further questions, we will proceed to testimony. Is that it? Okay. All right. We'll do Paige. All right. Chair calls Paige Williams, Director of Legislation, Texas Classroom Teachers Association. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
We show you registered as Paige Williams on behalf of the Texas Classroom Teachers Association. You'll be testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to testify this morning, and thank you to Chairman Burns for filing this bill and helping us to get a little bit more enforcement of legislation that he passed last session. As he said, Last session, the legislation passed requiring school districts to post their administrative regulations on their websites. And what we've learned kind of in the last year is that we're not finding these regulations on district websites. We're having a hard time obtaining a copy. And so we just want to make it clear that this is a requirement for all public school districts. And should an employee be filing a grievance about an administrative regulation, then if they have not been provided a copy or it hasn't been posted online for them to access, then it can't be poured out at the first available opportunity for being untimely.
Members, any questions for this witness? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Chair calls Kristen Brown, Superintendent, Lyford CISD.
Good morning.
Good morning. We show you registered as Kristen Brown on behalf of Lyford CISD as the superintendent. Will you be and you'll be testifying on the bill? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Morning, Chairman, committee members. One of the postings that we noted that is not really addressed in the bill is the required 10-day posting for positions. And our understanding is that the 10-day posting for positions was made prior to the internet being created and people utilizing the internet to give people enough time to know that there were vacancies. So one of the requests that we have in terms of consideration would be if the committee would consider adding wording that would allow districts to shorten that time. Because for school districts, I'm a small rural school district, 10 days means that I may have one math teacher who's certified apply for a position. And if they apply on the day one, then I have to leave that posting up for 9 more days. And most likely, that position will be offered to them in another school district close by. And so in addition to the items that you have listed, we're asking that you consider addressing the 10-day requirement that is required for school districts to be posted.
Okay. Members, any questions for this witness? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1662? If not, Chair recognizes Chairman Burns to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time this morning. We'll take a look at that 10-day posting requirement that was just raised. And but otherwise, I'd appreciate your favorable consideration of our bill. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Burns. Any questions? All right. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. We're ready to. Yeah. All right. Let's see. You got the script. Yeah. Give me just a second. Can I do it from here?
Yes, ma'am. Chair calls. The chair lays out a House Bill 1605 and recognizes Representative Buckley to explain the bill.
Okay. Good morning, members. Thank you, Dr. Allen. Members, thank you for the opportunity to lay out HB 1605. Members, this is my priority legislation for this session, and I hope you'll give it great consideration. Curriculums is a standard-based sequence of planned experiences where students practice and achieve proficiency in content and applied learning skills. Curriculum is the central guide for all educators as to what is essential for teaching and learning so that every student has access to a rigorous academic experience. In other words, curriculum is the game plan, but high-quality instructional materials, which are materials that contain full coverage of Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or TEKS, are the playbook to the practice reps that must be executed and performed if a student is expected to reach a high standard of achievement. Curriculum must anticipate a tough opponent, not play down to the competition. High-quality instructional materials set the bar high for student success. They meet standards where they are, and they prepare our students to succeed and to win. HB 1605 sets forth major reform for our public schools by increasing rigor in the classroom, returning the approval of instructional materials to the State Board of Education, reducing teacher workload, and provides for parental transparency. In terms of rigor, Texas has a unique set of rigorous education standards that we all know, or we all refer to as Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or the TEKS. However, a disconnect exists between instructional materials and the TEKS because state textbooks are only required to meet 50% of the TEKS. A recent study showed that only 17% of students were engaged with classwork that was on grade level. And when we talk about being on grade level, we're talking about whether or not the standards approved by the State Board of Education are being covered. House Bill 1605 establishes a curriculum vetting process that leads to more Texas school districts utilizing higher quality, grade level appropriate materials, thus increasing rigor in the classroom. Concerning the State Board of Education vetting and approval. In 2011, the State Board of Education lost their authority to properly review and vet instructional materials in many instances. This bill sets up a process for the SBOE to vet open education resources, textbooks, and curriculum developed by school districts. The vetting process will assure that instructional materials cover a significant portion of our state standards and that the SBOE will be given rulemaking authority to do so. Under current law, the SBOE can only review materials that publishers choose to submit. In order to be included on the high-quality instructional materials list, HB 1605 requires materials to be reviewed and vetted. Districts who use the State Board of Education approved instructional materials would receive additional funding supplemental to their instructional materials allotment, or IMA. State vetted resources are optional to districts and provide a bevy of new oversight, audit, and review processes to ensure student instructional materials are free from factual error, follow suitability standards, are high quality, and are aligned with TEKS at grade level. For our teachers, the teacher vacancy task force found that teachers report spending 7 to 12 hours per week searching for instructional materials. In an effort to reduce teacher workloads, this bill provides well-structured curricular resources so that teachers can focus on the most important part of their job, which is teaching. The task force concluded that high-quality instructional materials as prescribed in HB 1605 is a key component to recruiting and retaining teachers for Texas students. With that said, teachers know more about how students should receive instructional content. This bill ensures SBOE approved instructional materials are used in a manner that maintains the instructional flexibility that a professional classroom teacher must have to address the needs of each individual student. And for our parents, parental involvement is crucial to a child's education. This legislation introduces a parent portal aimed at fostering transparency for parents, granting them access to review instructional materials, and enabling them to reinforce crucial academic concepts with their children at home. HB 1605 places the burden of that portal on the publishers and not on the teacher or the districts. Additionally, this bill provides an avenue for parents to engage schools for a review of curriculum. Members, over the last several months, I've had the opportunity to not only work on the content of this bill, but to observe professional teachers with high-quality instructional materials in action in real Texas classrooms. My observations conclude that professional teachers with rigorous curriculum, grade-level instruction, and high-quality instructional materials create a high-quality classroom, a classroom where achievement gaps are closed and student success is celebrated. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this important legislation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I reserve my right to close.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Representative Buckley? Harris, Representative Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Buckley, are these open source materials, would they only be available online?
No, sir. That's sort of a misnomer as an open source. They're accessed typically through a digital portal, as many things are today. However, they are basically downloaded and printed to be used in classrooms. The bill includes funding to print those materials, and it provides the high-quality instructional materials that we put in the hands of students in classrooms. So this is not a virtual education program. This is a means to access high-quality, highly vetted, quality instructional materials through an online resource an open education resource, but those products and those materials are downloaded and printed into hands-on materials for students in the class.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Representative Hinojosa.
Thank you, Vice Chair Allen and Chair Buckley. I want to note that this is a very significant piece of legislation and will change the way we do curriculum in the state of Texas, probably for every school child, given what I think is the incentive that we're offering for all districts to use this curriculum. I have lots of questions about this bill, and so I don't know if I should be asking you, or I'm surprised to see the commissioner is not here, or someone from TEA to get clarity. This is a bill that I've spent many hours studying, and I still not sure exactly about key points in this bill. So I'll need some clarity.
Okay.
Should I ask you, or should we wait
We do have resource witnesses here as well, and
Okay.
you can ask me, and we will get your answers.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and wait for the TEA representative to ask those questions of that person. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. If there are no,
So you want me to call TEA first to answer any of those questions?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, if we can ask for Representative TEA.
Okay. Will a representative from TEA come up and
Let's see who we have.
avail yourself to questions? Will you state your name? Who's going to do first?
Hello, my name is Kristen Hull. I'm the Associate Commissioner of Instructional Strategy at the agency.
I'm Mike Meyer, Deputy Commissioner for Finance at TEA.
Thank you. Representative Hinojosa.
Thank you. I want to understand generally what we're trying to do with this bill. In this building, this bill has been referred to as the Amplify Bill, colloquial terms, and I'm trying to understand why. Can you help me understand that?
I will do my best. One of the things this bill does is provides, it directs the agency to develop open education resources, a set of materials that are owned by the state. This is a statute that has been in place for the agency since 2009 in terms of directing the agency to develop open education resources. However, the bill does require us to build specifically a set of resources in pre-K, kindergarten through 8th grade, reading, language arts, and math, and an integrated product. When you're speaking specifically to Amplify, back in 2018, when the agency had the ability to develop open education resources, we issued an RFP and Amplify applied. So we procured the baseline content for Amplify. However, Amplify is a private company and will continue to offer private products in the Texas market. They may choose to do so, but the product that we procured is now owned by the state, and we can continue to edit it and revise it based on the needs of Texas districts. We have done that.
Ask for clarity on that.
Yep.
So you have an open education resource that has been provided through Amplify, and that is a contract, or that is, we now own that product. Is that what you're saying?
We procured a baseline set of content that we now own, and that now is distinct from Amplify's private products that they own.
So that's one part, but this bill deals with instructional materials beyond the open education resource, correct?
Yes, this bill also introduces a state board vetting process of materials beyond just the open education resources.
And we also, and you said you issued an RFP, but I'm seeing a contract, or I'm seeing from the LBB that in fact the contractual obligation with Amplify was an emergency procurement, no bid.
There have been multiple RFPs related to the open education resources work. back in 2018, we had an RFP that we issued, and that resulted in the procurement of a set of OER content that had been piloted. When COVID hit, we issued a second RFP where we procured some additional resources to support districts as a part of COVID response. And so we also procured additional content in that RFP.
And that was the no bid?
It was not a sole source contract. It was an emergency procurement contract. So in that contract, it went to over 30 different publisher organizations, and we had over 23 responses.
Okay, so I see 19 million to Amplify. Is that?
I would have to check that exact number, but as a part of that procurement process, we did award 6 different contracts based on a number of responses we've received from publishers.
Okay, so we have the open education resource, and then separately we have instructional materials. We are currently also getting instructional materials from Amplify, correct? That we are using and offering to school districts.
As a part of the COVID response, we did procure a set of open education resources. In addition to that, we also temporarily licensed a set of products that were not considered open educational resources to support districts during COVID response. So Amplify had a separate set of products that we temporarily licensed for districts. So you might be referring to those as a part of the COVID response process.
Okay. And so there's a section of this bill on page 19, section 18. And so this section of the bill stands out as particularly interesting to me because in this section, there is not a provision for SBOE approval. This is the one section for procurement by the TEA that does not specify SBOE procurement. In section 31.0216A, it says the agency may contract directly, including by extending a contract for the purchase of instructional materials and technology for use by school districts. Is there a reason that in this section there's not a requirement for the SBOE to approve these procurements for school districts?
I may actually defer that question to the author of the bill for intent as to why something was or was not included. But if there's specific technical questions on that section, I would be happy to answer.
Well, and I'll hold that then, because I also would like to know why in this section of the bill it does not say, like other sections, that the school district does not have to use the instructional materials procured by the TEA.
When I am reading this bill, my understanding of it is focused on us contracting directly with organizations, but there are multiple places that in the bill that do say the commissioner may not require the use of the open education resources and or any other of the approved products vetted by the SBOE. So I do think there is still coverage that there's no requirement of use in the way that the bill is written.
Okay, but just to be clear, this is not the open education resource section, correct? Section 18.
Correct. It is the agency purchase of instructional materials and technology.
Right. So this is another section created, and in this specific section, it does not say districts don't have to use it. This section also waives the best value provisions of the government code, kind of like competitive bidding for this curriculum. And I would like to also understand why we would waive what is a very important protection of taxpayer money and ensuring that we get best value and best product for our students when it comes to something as important as curriculum for students in the entire state of Texas.
Mike Meyer again, Deputy Commissioner of Finance. I think my reading of that section would be that the competitive requirements would still apply because those are found in other parts of the procurement code. What this would be allowing is something kind of like the competitive process that we used during COVID, which was, we still went out with an RFP to multiple vendors, posted to the comptroller's website, but it was a little bit more expeditious process because the review of the procurement, the solicitation by the comptroller wasn't required. And I believe that would be what would be exempted here, but we could also take a closer look at it.
Why would we continue to have an expeditious process for procuring and a provision that says the best value requirements of the government code, quote, do not apply to a contract entered into under this section? Why the rush in the process for the purchase of curriculum that would be available to all students in the state of Texas?
As I mentioned, I think we need to take a little closer look, but as I mentioned, I believe there are other competitive requirements related to competition and achieving best value in other parts of the procurement code. So I don't think that would be exempted here.
See, when I look at this bill, I'm not even sure why it has this Section 18. There are other provisions of code that already give the commissioner authority to purchase instructional materials and technology without waiving best value requirements, without that have SBOE approval, and that also give districts the flexibility to not use the curriculum. So I would just ask that we look at why that section is even in the bill, because I don't understand.
I do have one additional point to offer for you there. Generally, when we go through a contracting process, we do check with DIR to check their master contracts. This particular section of the bill waives that step. DIR has never had a master contract with any curriculum provider, so they've never there's never been anything to respond to there. So this is the DIR step where, again, we look at master contracts, and there's been no historical contracts there to date.
Right, but this would waive best value requirements for automated information systems, right? And just because we've never done that before, which is another kind of question I have, why, what is it that we're contemplating purchasing by the agency? Doesn't mean we should waive a requirement to get best value, or I just don't understand why we would.
And I would still assume we are seeking to get best value through the competitive solicitation. There's just been no textbook-specific procurements as a part of DIR.
Okay, but now that we're doing it, it would make sense that we continue to get best value for taxpayers.
As I said, there are other procurement requirements elsewhere in the code that relate to competition and best value. We'd have to, again, follow up with some more information, but there are other forms of exemptions for other agencies related on very content-specific procurements that an agency might go through, which I think that would be my understanding of this section.
Okay, I want to ask about where money is coming from for this bill, and I apologize, but as of last night, I had not seen a fiscal note. Maybe there is one today?
Yeah.
There is, okay. But what I did get was an email from the agency about, and I appreciate receiving that email, about where the costs come from. So I still have some questions about where we're getting money for this bill. And specifically, like whether the money is coming from the foundation school program or from the technology and instructional materials allotment. So in my question, how much per student will districts receive from the technology and instructional materials allotment? I'm trying to understand what's there and how much our districts are getting and what the agency is getting. The answer that I received from the TEA says the legislature restored the TIMA, Technology and Instructional Materials Allotment, to traditional levels. Can you explain to me what the word restored means in this context?
Yes, ma'am. Prior to COVID, the biennial appropriation from the Instructional Materials and Technology Fund was about $1 billion per biennium. So that was 2 or 3 biennia prior to COVID. During COVID, the appropriation out of that fund was reduced into the 400 million area, about 430 if I remember correctly. And that spending capacity, which is considered part of general revenue, was used instead to support programs for learning recovery kind of in the aftermath of COVID. So the total dollars were still appropriated for school, in this case, learning recovery. In the current budget, the one that's been filed and is before the House right now, the money that was applied towards COVID recovery has switched back over to instructional materials, so it's back to the $1 billion for the biennium that was the pattern before COVID hit.
Okay, so with COVID, TEA raked about $600 million off the top of the TIMA fund used for grants to districts that you are referring to.
Well, TEA doesn't have that authority. It happened during the appropriations process last session.
Okay, and so this money in our technology and instructional materials allotment comes from our endowment of the permanent school fund, right, which makes then a distribution. This is the SBOE makes a distribution to the available school fund. And under statute, half of the money from the SBOE is supposed to go into the technology and instructional materials allotment. Is that correct?
The statute actually applies to both the SBOE distribution and any other distribution, so that would include distributions from the school land board that come from the general land office. However, the statute states that the SBOE shall set aside 50% for deposit to the fund, but then goes on to say subject to appropriation. So ultimately, it's a legislative decision how much actually goes into the fund.
It's a legislative decision, but historically, we have honored that 50% statutory language because that is real money in the classroom, the technology and instructional materials allotment. That's money that's not money that is that like in the foundation school program, we put in money there from taxpayer money, from the endowment, and then that's less money we have to spend from GR. That's less state contribution. That's real money in the classroom for the TIMA fund. 50% of that money would have been $1,556,354,145. So $1.5 billion. But the LAR submitted by the agency was only $1,049,000,000. So it wasn't a 50% distribution. It was a 24.3 distribution, according to my math, which meant that $500 million was not allocated to our students for classroom money at a time when we went to Online Star at a time of record inflation when our kids need that money. And so I would like to know why, at a time of record surpluses, record inflation, when our kids need technology just to meet state accountability requirements, why the agency cut in their LAR to this body the amount by almost a half.
As I said, TEA wouldn't have the ability to go above the $1 billion. This takes a little bit of process explanation, so if you'll indulge me for a second. When an agency submits their LAR, you receive a general revenue limit prior to doing that. So the general revenue limit is based on past appropriations, and both the Instructional Materials Fund and the funding that was used for COVID recovery count as general revenue. And so within our general revenue limit, our base, we had the ability to restore the $600+ million into the Instructional Materials Fund, but we did not have the ability to go beyond that because it would have exceeded our general revenue limit.
Okay,
that decision is deferred to the legislature.
But it's not general revenue. It's money that's coming from the SBOE and a distribution from the permanent school fund. That's not general revenue.
For the purposes of the appropriations process, it's considered inside of the general revenue limit.
Why is that?
I'd have to defer to the Legislative Budget Board and the Governor's Office. They issue the instructions for the LARs.
Okay. There's another section in this bill, section 28 at the top of page 30. That speaks to a fee. In fact, the caption of the bill authorizes a fee. It raises eyebrows for me because the language specifically says, ensure open education resource instructional materials are available to all students, parents, classroom teachers, and school districts in this state free of charge except for a fee for the printing or shipping of materials. Can you explain to me why we would be charging parents, students, and school districts a fee for their textbooks?
So all of the open education resources are free. Oh, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All of the open education resources are free digitally, and any parent or educator could open those resources, download them, and print them for free themselves. What this is referring to is if a school district wants to purchase sets of materials for their classrooms and for their students, they will be a charge for a printing vendor to print those in bulk and send them to districts. But any individual could join and go online, access the digital resources for free, and print them directly for free.
The language, though, doesn't say that the fee would be just charged to school districts. The language specifically says students and parents, which is problematic because there's a constitutional right that our students have for free textbooks, specifically State Board of Education to set aside a sufficient amount of available funds to provide free textbooks for the use of children attending public free schools of this state. And so if it's not the intent to charge a fee, which I hope it is not, to students and parents, I would ask that we change that to make that clear that we are not now putting that in statute.
I do also think there is another section of the bill that does allow a parent to go, or an individual, to go and purchase a set of those materials in printed format as well. So it may be referring to that. So think about logging online as a parent. You can open, these materials are digitally available. So you could go, I'm a first grade parent, I'm gonna log on, I'm gonna go to, the first unit that my student is being taught, and I could print that directly for free by myself, at my home printer. This bill does also, though, allow an individual to be able to request that a full packaged set of materials be shipped directly to them and printed through, a printing organization, and that's where a fee would be incurred.
But how does that comport with a constitutional requirement that we offer free textbooks?
Yeah, you want to get in?
Are you talking about the OER statute in particular?
I'm talking about the language. I'm talking about this constitutional language that requires free textbooks to be provided to the students of public schools in the state.
Representative Hinojosa may just add to that. This bill provides for $20 per student to be used to print the materials out. District utilizes the materials. The $20 per student will provide and print those materials that will be given to the students. So the school districts, there is no charge to the students to access the materials or to have them. The districts are paid to do that. Plus, they receive an additional, if they do use SBOE vetted material, approved material, they received an additional $40 that they can use, that is not for the materials, but they can use it for teacher training. They can use it for all sorts of enrichment to make sure that teachers are prepared, if you will, to utilize these materials. So I want to be clear about charging for the materials.
I appreciate that clarification. What I'm hearing from the agency is that parents will be charged to get materials different from the $20 that the districts get if they utilize this. And I have a problem with parents and students being charged when they have a right to free textbooks in the state of Texas.
I understand the difference now that you're speaking to. Generally, in the instructional materials allotment that a district has, they are going and purchasing all of the student material copies that they would need to teach the student in a particular classroom. So what I'm referring to is just if a parent wanted to go and, in addition, purchase those materials to look at home or for any particular reason for them to have, they could do that. But that is generally not how the student actually gets the materials from, day to day in the classroom.
And I think also this part of the bill is really referencing a parent with a child not enrolled could access those materials, and they would pay for that if they're like a homeschool student. Certainly not those kids enrolled.
Okay, so this is intended also for non-public school children.
The Open Education Resource License is an open license, so anybody could access the materials, download them, print them, use them, modify them. But when we're thinking about generally the historic use of the TIMA and the allotment, that is really where districts are often taking those funds and using it to purchase their classroom sets, their student sets of materials. And that's where they really work to ensure all students can access the materials being taught in the classroom. But that is done usually by the district, where the local school boards are determining what sets of materials to adopt. And once they make that decision, then they move forward to procure what they need to using their TIMA funds.
So we currently have an open education resource portal or resource, correct?
We have a set of open education materials. It is currently online and available for districts to access or for anybody to access. And then the bill also does direct the agency to develop an open education resource portal called the OER repository.
Okay, and right now, anybody can access it, homeschool kids, private school?
Correct. It is public and anybody could go and see all of the materials online digitally for free.
Okay, there's a reference to the $40 that's per student that districts get if they utilize this curriculum. What's not clear, is this a one-time $40?
It's an annual. It's an annual $40, and it's not just for open education resources. It would be for any set of materials that is approved by the state board vetting process in the bill, as described in the bill. And a district would not lose that money over time. So let's say they got $40 in a particular year, but weren't ready to make a purchase. They could keep that money for the next year and make that purchase in a different year.
Okay, so, but just to make you all aware, the statute doesn't say annually, so we would probably want to.
Yeah. It's intended, and I want to make sure we're clear on that. It's intended for that to roll over. If they don't need to purchase it, they could literally decide to access SBOE vetted materials and have to do it 5 years in the future, and you could see that $40 could actually stack up to more per child, 40 times 5, or what have you, or 2 or 3.
Okay. I think that is all that I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Members?
Yeah, I said one question. Just to be clear, this bill does not, this bill basically adds money. It's additional money to the instructional materials allotment, or the TIMA, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The intent is for the TIMA to be restored to the historical amount, and any money from this bill would be on top of that.
That's correct. Okay. All right. Just wanted that to be clear for the record. Thank you.
Any other questions? If no further questions, we'll proceed to testimony. Thank you. Dr. Bobby Ott from Timble ISD, registered for the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Well, morning, Chairman Buckley and representative members, thank you for your time and service. I'm here to testify for the bill and really about the value of high-quality instructional materials and to piggyback on the last discussion, the need for more money for instructional materials in the classroom. So my name is Bobby Ott. I'm the superintendent of Temple Independent School District. We are a district of about 9,000 students. We are a district situated in a heavy business and industry community, 6A, one large high school district. Student demographic, 42% Hispanic or 30% African American, 25% white, and 77% economically disadvantaged. We also serve several members from our Fort Hood military installation. So I'd like to say that I believe Temple's a school district that is very well representative of the state of Texas. The Temple story is one that has become a demonstration site. We've had plenty of parents and legislators and community members come visit our elementary schools in particular because of our implementation of our structured literacy program. Prior to the implementation of our structured literacy high-quality instructional materials, we, along with most school districts, implemented what we call balanced literacy as a model for teaching reading. Balanced literacy is focused more on activities that involve small group learning style and uses guided reading strategies to meet students where they are. So what basically happened in Temple ISD, in particular with as many students we have that are economically disadvantaged, is we have these literacy blocks, right, like most schools do in their elementary schools. And what we found is during these teacher workstations that most of the instruction provided to reach students where they were at were below grade level. And then we expected students on the day of the start to remarkably perform on grade level, and that wasn't happening. Another disadvantage under the balanced literacy model was that the content materials that were used assumed that our students had background knowledge. I like to say in Temple that our students do not have learning gaps. They have experience gaps, and that's because many of them come from less provisioned homes. And so a lot of times the phonics instruction that was occurring was not connected at all to the literature that the students were reading. So we effectively had gaps all along the way of teaching and learning. Based on the low number of students that we had performing on grade level, in particular after the pandemic, and watching teachers work as hard as they possibly could to try to find materials to support our students on their own, we wanted to take a more structured and explicit approach to instruction. And this is why we switched from balanced literacy to structured literacy in Temple ISD. Additionally, our teachers were being trained in the science of teaching reading, and this was a requirement of House Bill 3, as many of you know. And they were finding that we were not adequately reaching all students based on the brain research that they were taught as teachers going through this training. So when we switched over, we have found great success in structured literacy because it focuses on explicit, systematic grade level language instruction. And with the HQIM materials we selected, they had built-in content that connected our children to what they were actually reading. And so that right there accelerated the classroom and the learning. Further, it reduced the amount of prep on teachers because now they could focus on the how instead of the what. And I will tell you that teachers across the state are spending a lot of time on the what. I can promise you that. When walking into our classrooms, if you were to come in today, and I would invite any of you, it would be hard for you to tell when you walked into our elementary classrooms between struggling learners and ones that are not. Equally, it would be hard to tell who's a rookie teacher and who's a veteran teacher because of the way these materials and teachers have interacted with students. It's really produced a more collaborative learning experience where all students are expected to perform at grade level, and the materials are of high interest, and they keep our students engaged in grade level instruction. We have seen a significant difference in reading and writing performance and teacher delivery through these materials and this approach to literacy. In fact, we just gave our last reading benchmark 2 weeks ago, and what we got in return in terms of results was that an average of 72% of our students, and this is based on the state's early guidance tables, are predicted to pass the STAR exam. And this is at the elementary grade. And I will tell you that that is 20% plus more than we've had in previous years. We have found great success in Temple ISD. However, I do want to add a couple caveats. First of all, I believe school districts should have the opportunity to use what they see is working for their children. I want you to know that when we implemented this program, it was never forced on our staff. We introduced this as a pilot to 3 campuses. And then after we introduced it, our teachers and principals invited teachers and principals of other campuses in the district that were non-pilot to come over and visit classrooms. And through those observations and the inaugural student results, now we're at a place where everyone in the school district, all campuses, are implementing this structured literacy approach district-wide. And I think that's the best way to go about it. House Bill 1605, some of the things that I favor about it, first of all, is that it's a voluntary process. And that validates what I just said a second ago. There should be no coercion at the state level to tell school districts or teachers in classrooms what works for their kids. I'm a big believer in that. If House Bill 1605 does not come from new revenue, then I will tell you I would be standing here with a different testimony altogether. Fortunately, House Bill 1605 provides a real win by allowing districts to continue using existing materials while creating a new incentive for districts to use high-quality instructional materials, such as the materials that we are now using in Temple ISD. This bill can support districts and teachers using materials that work for their students by setting up a program with new monies, and that is the key. This has to be new revenue. It absolutely has to be. This would support districts that have found materials like we have to work for our students and provide the necessary dollars for full implementation. The truth is, our current implementation right now is running on soft money. We have applied for 2 grants to subsidize our success. That's what's happening right now. And the reason why is because IMA did not provide enough money to cover it. I mean, that is why. And I think maybe some of the things that you heard earlier may be indicative of that. So in addition to supporting House Bill 1605, I separately support funding IMA at its full statutory funding amount. Statutory. That is different than historical. Statutory funding amount so that districts have sufficient resources to purchase the materials that work for their children. Thank you.
Any questions for the witness?
Dr. Allen.
Oh, Representative Hinojosa.
Thank you, Vice Chair Allen. Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
By statutory, do you mean the 50%? That
Yes, I do.
in statute. Appreciate that. The product you used was Amplify?
That's one of them. Yes, ma'am.
So what I have heard, and I would just like to get your feedback on this, did you get instructional coaches to help your classroom teachers learn how to use and implement this product?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have instructional coaches already on our campuses. We have a literacy coach and instructional coach at each of our elementary campuses. But to your point, the training and technical assistance involved with the high-quality instructional materials, that made the first year pretty choppy because we didn't have the funds, and that goes back to what I was talking about when I said full implementation. So the first year, basically what we did is we had feedback loops, and every 6 weeks or so, I had flexibility in the calendar where I was able to give days to where teachers could learn and work with their instructional coaches and get feedback and train on the materials. So the first year of implementation, we had 3 campuses. And that staff development before the school year started, I had to set those campuses aside to get them schooled up on the program and the materials that we used. The next year, when everybody went on board, it was much easier. So I was able to schedule days throughout the calendar to make sure they had ongoing implementation and support and training.
So you used your own instructional
We did.
to provide the support to
We
classroom
did.
teachers?
Mhm.
Okay.
We sure did.
Representative Dutton.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for what you do. And members, this was a superintendent of the year.
Oh, well, it's not me, it's where I'm at, but thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'm
Thank
blessed
you
to
for
be
what
in
you do.
Temple.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Representative Buckley.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Dr. Ott, could you speak to especially your newer teachers, those that have been there with you 1, 2, 3 years, and the response? I know when I visited your campuses recently, their commentary to me on the use of high quality instructional materials and their I guess their feeling of success and their willingness to stay in the profession, if you will. Can you speak to the impact that the materials have had on those teachers, especially beginning teachers?
Yeah, the confidence, when they sit in professional learning communities or PLCs and they're interacting with master teachers or lead teachers, they just feel so much more confident. Before, a lot of our teachers, whether it was Pinterest or wherever else, they're going all over the place looking for materials to connect to students. And we have such a range of learners in our classrooms. We're a very diverse school district, that for them to have materials that were already built into the program that allowed them to connect to students, at least as a baseline. We didn't say you had to use them, but here's a starting place. It was a resource that for many of them, it allowed them to get through their first year with less amount of time spent outside the classroom. And it gave them a chance to focus more on the how, which is why they went to college and what they want to do. They want to teach students.
What about when I believe I visited a bilingual classroom?
You did.
We were utilizing
bilingual
quality
campus
instructional materials, and I still remember that teacher. I think I told you at the time, if we could clone her into about 1,000 different ones, we'd love to have her all over Texas. So talk about your bilingual program and how you've implemented the
It works equally effective, or it's equally effective in our bilingual campuses as well, the programs that we use. I will tell you that there are some gaps in some of the high-quality instructional materials that we've used, and we've learned that through the feedback from our teachers, both in our monolingual and bilingual campuses. And so in those cases, we work with the vendors and say, hey, here are some things that you need to shore up, and they've been open to those suggestions, but we've seen equal success in our bilingual and monolingual campuses.
And so you started with three campuses.
That is correct.
You told me about the jump in the pool, dip your toe in the pool, or something.
Right. So
don't force it. Now tell me, how many campuses are utilizing the HQIM now in Temple?
All of our elementary schools, that's 9 of them.
That was organic? It wasn't?
It was. I pulled principals together when there was a pilot opportunity, and I said, look, we have 3 choices. You can dip your toe in the water, maybe pick a couple grade levels or what have you. You can sit outside the pool and watch people swim, or you can jump in with both feet. It's whatever you decide to do. I want you to work with your teachers and take a look at this. We had 3 campuses that wanted to jump into the pool. They felt like that what was going on was a disconnect between what they were learning in House Bill or during House Bill 3, the Science of Teaching Reading, and their scores weren't where they wanted to be. So their teachers agreed, hey, let's give this a shot. So they did. And then after that first year, word got out there because people were talking all throughout the district. And so principal said, what can we do to facilitate some sharing across the district? And so we set up these we call them teacher demonstration sites, to where we gave teachers time off to go to the 3 campuses and observe classrooms, much like you did, and talk with teachers during their PLCs, and then see results and really have conversations that are, very, very detailed. And that just really spawned this whole movement to where they said, hey, we don't want to wait till next year. We want to start now. And, well, we didn't have the money to start now. So We had to wait, build that in our next budget cycle, and then it ended up going all the way, all of our 9 campuses. So it was very organic. And I think that's the beauty of it. Listen, fidelity and buy-in are synonymous, in my opinion. They truly are. And if you really want staff to buy into implementation, they have to be part of that process. So this wasn't anything that I came out and said, this is what we're going to do. They work with their children, our children, every single day, closer than I do. So they made the choice.
Okay. So the main, I would say, when we talk about this, we hear a lot of brand names that are being mentioned, types of curriculum, but really what works best in the classroom is what an individual district decides to implement. But being able to choose from a menu, if you will, of materials that have been vetted so that you're getting the on-grade level instruction, that you're getting the type of instruction you want, and then good lesson plans and lesson design for teachers. Is that correct? There's no one brand that's better than the other. It's more about just having flexibility for high quality materials.
It wouldn't matter to me if it was Carnegie, Eureka, Amplify. It doesn't matter. It's what's going to work for our kids. And I know that's different across the state of Texas. All districts and community types are very different, and we need to respect those. And that's the one thing I do like about the bill is there is a voluntary, you can elect to participate in it. And at the end of the day, it is more money if IMA is fully restored than it is additional money. And in my mind, those are two things that we need. We need to put more money in our classrooms.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for the witness?
Right here.
Chairman. Okay, Representative King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Ott,
yes, sir.
I appreciate your testimony, and I know you've worked this program, but I'm hearing a lot of concerns about. I mean, I liked your analogy about dipping your toe in the water and trying it out. And so once your teachers have bought in and they participated in this program, do they have the ability to come to you just as an individual teacher and say, I don't want to do this in my classroom? Or once it's adopted, everybody does it?
So every year, no matter what program we're using, at the end of the year, we do a feedback deal with our principals, and they don't come to me directly, but they'll go to their principals. And we have an elementary and a secondary curriculum committee where we have representatives from all of our campuses that come together for recommendations for instructional materials. So if it's something that needs to be modified, or if it's not producing and we need to change altogether, we make those decisions internally.
So once the decision's made and a third grade's doing it and all the teachers are participating, did you have any come back and say, we don't want to do this next year?
No, we didn't, but we did have a few of them that were teachers that used other materials, and I'll tell you what we've done in those cases, and they're master teachers and they have found success. So to your point, what we did is in working with them, they used those HQIM materials in Tier 2 or during intervention time versus during their Tier 1 instruction. So we've given teachers the flexibility to use it either during the core instruction or during the intervention time. So some of our teachers that have found great success in other materials, then they've used it during intervention.
Perfect. So would you agree that this doesn't limit local control?
It didn't in our case, no. I wouldn't think it would at all. Okay. That's the thing I like about it, is I feel like it's voluntary. If somebody is telling us there's something I don't even subscribe to that. I don't tell my folks that this is what you have to do. We have to do the state standards. I can tell you that. But beyond that, the how you get there, we work together in making those decisions. My staff, principals, myself, etc. So.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet. No, great question.
I want to ask one. What
Yes, ma'am.
percentage of parent participation did you have?
As far as selecting the materials?
Usage of the material.
I would say moderate. We have parents that have come and visit our classrooms and so forth, but, we really struggle with parent participation, to be honest with you, in our community. Many of our children, I'm just being frank, come from situations where they're single parents or their parents are very busy or raised by grandparents. We do have a process for that. I wish there was more involvement in that from the parent end, but I'd say it's moderate at best. Yeah. I mean, we promote it. We try to get them there. We certainly share what information we're doing with our parents, and they have access to the materials. That's all available.
Thank you.
No, great
Any other
question.
questions? Thank you.
Yes. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Did I see your hand go?
Thank you, Dr. Ott.
You bet, thank
Okay.
you.
The chair calls Jennifer Kihon. Did I pronounce that right?
Close.
Pretty close.
It's Kuhn.
Kuhn, okay. I show Jennifer Kuhn from Round Rock ISD testifying for the bill.
Yes.
Thank you. You may
Hi.
proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Buckley and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Kuhn, and I am a special education inclusion and resource teacher for Round Rock ISD, where I am wrapping up my 16th year in education. In addition to my special education certification, I hold a Texas State certification in elementary general education, ESL, talented and gifted, and am completing my certification by the Texas Reading Academy in the science of reading. Most recently, I completed my one-year term with the Teacher Vacancy Task Force, representing Region 13 in the Teacher Experience Working Group. I am here today in support of House Bill 1605, regarding the expansion and funding of high-quality instructional materials made available by the Texas Education Agency, a recommendation made by the task force that originated in my working group. Why do I think this is important? Teachers have to be incredibly flexible and resilient in mastering and utilizing new materials, sometimes given only days before the beginning of a new school year. Throughout my teaching career, I have seen instructional materials come and go. I have had to learn and implement instructional materials only to have the resource removed from my district, sometimes within 1 year. I know firsthand the hours and effort it takes to plan quality lessons that meet the needs of all of my students. Unfortunately, in an effort to maximize teacher time, I have also seen a trend where many teachers are relying on pay-for-a-lesson websites that may neither align with our TEKS or are not high quality and lack rigor. Teaching is an art. Many would rather view teaching as a science, a profession where you can do A and the result is always B. However, with numerous years of firsthand teaching experience, I can say that that is rarely the case. A scripted lesson for every classroom in the entire state of Texas is not what the art and craft of teaching requires, nor is that the intent of expanding access to high-quality instructional materials. As a task force member, the discussion with my peers was in regard to the ability for teachers throughout the state, both urban and rural, to have access to curated resources, access to high-quality materials at a state level. For me, this means that districts throughout our state would have the ability to give teachers access to resources that are research-based, aligned with the TEKS, and vetted as grade level appropriate for student use. This would reduce the amount of time both new and experienced teachers spend searching for lesson planning material and increase the time we have to prepare for content delivery and differentiation. Teachers should not have to learn new systems and hunt for new resources continually. If you are lucky enough to teach in a district that provides unit or daily exemplar lessons, it makes the process of creating lesson plans a little easier. However, across our state, not all districts are able to provide personnel and funds to research, align, and write these basic lessons at the same level. Expanding access to high-quality instructional materials will ensure that all districts are able to provide their teachers with resources that will allow for all students in our state access to the same high-quality instructional materials. For teachers I have worked alongside and also hearing feedback from teachers throughout our state, a common reason for leaving our profession is being overwhelmed due to the lack of resources, time, and support. Investing in the expansion and access to high-quality instructional materials for all teachers would be a step in alleviating some of these burdens. Thank you for your time and for valuing teacher voice on this issue.
Thank you. Any questions? Who is that? Representative King?
Thank you. I just wanted to expand it. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank
It's always good to hear from somebody that's actually done it instead of those that haven't. And, you know, and everybody's scared of it because of the unknown. So I really appreciate the real world experience. But I keep hearing a lot about how this will take away flexibility. And I remember a dozen years ago that, you know, teachers, you know, the education community as a whole didn't like the textbook system where, you know, SBOE had charge of the curriculum and they sent it to your classroom and that's what you taught. And so we moved away and from that and teachers got the flexibility. And what I hear is just what you just said. One of the main reasons teachers are leaving the classroom is they have to go find the lesson, they have to build the lesson, they have to teach the lesson, they have to grade the lesson, and they're overworked in that regard. And I just heard you say that. So what is your opinion of those that keep telling me that this takes away teacher control and this is basically you know, C-scope, to use the term back in the day?
I lived through C-scope.
Yeah. So
that is a bad, that is a bad word to a teacher. Yes.
Exactly. I keep
Yes.
hearing it. But I just heard you testify that you feel like this gives you more flexibility and more time to actually teach kids. So can you drill down on that for me on your experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd appreciate doing that. So the way that I see it as a former classroom teacher, now a special education teacher that works with multiple grade levels, I'm constantly on the search for resources for myself when I'm teaching students directly and for supporting the teachers that I work with. Having kind of a one-stop shop to go and find resources that I know are aligned, that I know have been vetted, that I know are aligned with the TEKS would make it much easier versus, okay, I have the student, they didn't do well with the tier 1 lesson that they were given. I'm looking for some tier 2 resources. Let me Google and see what there is. That can get you down many, many rabbit holes. And that, unfortunately, is what many teachers do to save time. It wasn't until I was on the task force that I even knew about the OER resources. And I've been teaching for a long time. That's the type of information that I think really needs to get down to the teacher level, that there are state resources that we can access. Like I said, teaching is an art. When I was a classroom teacher, I could never use the same lessons. You can't use a pre-printed lessons because those individuals in my classroom were not the same as the individuals I had the previous year. I have to differentiate to meet all the needs of my students. So it's a starting point, but then you have to know your students and you need to personalize that lesson on a daily basis. So it gives you the framework. These high quality instructional materials gives a framework, but I would never give up my expertise as a teacher to make sure to customize those lessons for the students I'm currently working with.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Representative Hinojosa.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So you mentioned about having to be flexible with your lesson plans and change them according to the needs of your classroom. There's a part of this bill that is about putting lesson plans online prior to the beginning of the school year. And that work product includes answer sheets for tests and answer sheets, if I remember correctly. One of the concerns that I've heard is how a teacher is, if they have to have the cake baked a month before school starts to put online under this bill, how are they supposed to shift and move their lesson plans for the day to meet the needs of their kids?
I'm not familiar with that particular section of the bill. I can only speak as a classroom teacher, that I have to be responsive to the needs of my students. Saying, like I said, I can't say I'm going to do lesson A today and all of my 100% of my students are going to master it tomorrow. That's not, that's not realistic. So to say, we're going to do this today and this tomorrow, teachers plan that, but you also have to be receptive to what the student needs are. So again, that could be a framework that a teacher starts with and says, my intent is to do A and tomorrow to do B. However, as a experienced and responsive teacher, you would have to adjust your instruction to meet your students where they are.
Okay, so Round Rock didn't have to put up their instructional materials, which includes material used by teacher, lesson plan, answer key, grading rubric, and unit plan up.
So we have what is called the ARC. So in Round Rock ISD, teachers have access to unit and daily lesson plans, but just like Superintendent Ott was speaking to, it's not a requirement for a Round Rock teacher to follow those in step and in line. It is a resource for teachers to use to build their lessons.
Okay, but that, and so that, even that though, are you required to put that online or make accessible the beginning of the school year before, a month before school year starts?
I can't speak for myself. I'm no longer a classroom teacher. I work with special education students. I'm not aware that the teachers are required to do that for our district.
So you didn't use the product, the high quality instructional material or the amplified product in Round Rock yourself?
No, but I've accessed the ARC, which is the Round Rock ISD unit plans and daily lessons. That was a resource when I was a classroom teacher with Round Rock ISD.
Okay. But what we're talking about in this bill
is the state, high quality instructional materials, yes.
But that you didn't use?
No.
Okay.
And that is something that, honestly, speaking with the teachers I work with, had no idea existed. And that's what we want to change the narrative, so teachers are aware that that is a resource, the OER resources, and that's why we want to see an expansion. And as a task force member, hearing from my rural school district peers that they really need such a resource due to not, unlike myself, not having a district that's able to write daily and unit lesson plans for them.
So part of the bill.
Can I interject?
Oh, sure.
Okay, let me just, the intent of the bill, and I just want to be clear, and I'd be happy to look at it with you and work through it, is that teachers are not required to provide this level of transparency. It's the publishers. And so that's, okay, I want to make sure that's clear, and if we need to work through that, we certainly can. But, so that's the intent, is that we provide, teachers can teach, and the publishers will provide that portal of transparency for parents and others. So anyway, I want to be clear on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Chair calls Jonathan Dant. Mr. Dant, I show you with Uplift Education.
Yes.
And you're testifying for the bill, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and Chair Buckley. My name is Jonathan Dant. I'm the Managing Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment at Uplift Education. We're the largest network of public charter schools in North Texas, with 45 schools serving over 23,000 students and families from pre-K through 12th grade. We have a 100% college acceptance rate for the past 20 years, and over 80% of our students come from economically disadvantaged families. We have been using high-quality instructional materials labeled from the state for several years in our math program. Both Great Minds Eureka Math in our primary schools and Carnegie Math in our secondary schools. We found before adopting that many of our teachers were spending too much time, as my colleagues have said, creating materials, finding the resources, writing assessments, and that was leading to a lot of our teacher burnout. It was also leading to just inconsistency in scholar outcomes across our schools. So for a parent coming to our schools, they weren't getting the same high quality instruction at one of our campuses to the other. And so we chose to adopt these curricula, one, because they align to our school model. and because they're based in research that the state has outlined. And so we saw then that our teachers were spending more time actually looking at their student work, looking at ways that they can tailor their lessons to accelerate instruction for their kids and to reduce the gaps in student outcomes. We see that today, because we are using these materials, this year alone from our interim assessments, we're on track to grow at least 15% in our math classes on this year's STAR. We are moving to accelerate, so all of our 8th grade students are going to sit for Algebra 1 in 8th grade so that they have more opportunities for high performance math classes in high school. And we also see that our parents are more invested because they have access to these resources. Schools can put on curricular nights so they can get parents really involved in understanding what their kids are doing. The pandemic certainly has changed a lot of things for the district. We have far more teacher shortages now, and so we were able to participate in the Texas COVID Learning Acceleration Strategy, which actually gave us additional funds for using these high-quality instructional materials, so that we've had more opportunities to develop our new teachers that may be on alternate certification pathways and not have the same skills. And so it's really given us the opportunity to spend time in the classrooms developing teachers and leaders. And so we support this bill because it would continue allowing us to give those materials in teachers' hands. It would allow us to continue to develop the teachers, both new and existing in our classrooms. And we also push, because we like the criteria for the selection of the high quality instructional materials, but we push to expand the list, which this bill does, because we do know that there are very few options on there now, and not one option fits everyone. And so more options for districts to buy in and have that choice would be really helpful for us going in the future. Thank you.
Any questions from Mr. Dent? Representative Hitt also.
Thank you, Mr. Dent, for your testimony. So I'm glad you're testifying, because one thing I noticed is that all of the parental rights section of the first part of the bill don't apply to charter schools. Would you support having those same parental rights requirements you mentioned, having parents having access to the material and helps them be more engaged, but none of the requirements of access to the material and review apply to charter schools in the bill? Would you be supportive of having that part of the bill apply to charter schools?
I'm not completely familiar with the language around that part, but we are fully open. We allow our parents in to see any of our materials if they ask. It is great because these materials are all published online, so we can push our parents to see those materials, and so we have full open door transparency.
Okay, and so the same requirements on the school district that this bill imposes, statutory requirements for a review process, parental rights to trigger those review processes, and requirements that all those materials be posted online is something you would support?
Yes, I would support that.
And then there's another section in this bill that in order to receive the money, the district must create a transition plan to OER to receive the $40 that you would already get. You would also be supportive of having that part of the bill apply to charter schools?
Yes, that is my team's job, to create those plans to make it easier for implementation for teachers.
Okay. I think that would be something important to consider if charter schools are going to take advantage of getting this allotment as well.
Any other questions for the witness? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. I just want to warn the audience that we're getting really close to time to go to the floor, and so we're going to call the next two witnesses up at the same time and ask them to be aware of the time that limit that we're facing. The chair calls Pam Little and Julie Pickering. Pam Little, I show that you are witnessing for yourself. and that you are on the bill.
Yes.
Correct? Julie? So that you're testifying for yourself and that you are on the bill, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I'm testifying on behalf of my district, the 2.5 million people in my district.
And your district?
Yes, ma'am.
Yourself
That's how
and
I
your
registered.
district?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I want to make sure that I got that down correct. Say that again. Say it in the microphone, please.
I'm testifying for myself and also representing the 2.5 million people of District 7.
Thank you.
You might want to add that I am sharing comments from the chair of the State Board of Education, Kevin Ellis.
And if you're making a comment, say your name in the microphone and then make your comment.
Pam Little, and I am sharing comments from the chair of the State Board of Education, Dr. Kevin Ellis.
Thank you. Does that cover it? Thank you.
Okay, we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Buckley and Vice Chair Allen. I know you have served on the State Board of Education before, and thank you for that service. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on HB 1605. My name is Pam Little, and I am the Vice Chair of the State Board of Education. I represent District 12, which is Collin County, and the northeastern corner of Texas. Dr. Ellis, chair of the SBOE, could not be here today due to his professional obligations. Commissioner Morav consulted with Chair Ellis and me several times through the summer and fall regarding the need for this bill, and more recently met with many, if not all, of the members of the State Board regarding HB 1605. And we very much appreciate the commissioner seeking out SBOE input. Dr. Ellis then polled the members who had met with the commissioner to get their thoughts. There are a lot of items that align with the thoughts of many SBOE members. First, giving the state board authority to determine the TEKS percentage in instructional materials by rule. Statute currently requires instructional materials to include only 50%. I do think the 50% threshold is too low and should be closer to 100% for the foundation courses. This percentage can then vary based on the course, such as a career and technology courses may not necessarily need to have a high percentage of the TEKS. Secondly, providing the SBO with input into the Texas Resource Review with approval of the rubric. As we approve the standards, it's important that that rubric match those standards, so I think that's a good addition. And also adding SBOE approval to the open education resources. All of these items will strengthen the SBOE authority over instructional materials. There were, however, some concerns. I will list them and then provide an explanation. The first concern would be to changing the adoption process of instructional materials by doing away with our proclamation process. Why so much emphasis on the open education resources versus the traditional method? Areas of conflicting rulemaking authority and the funding mechanisms. With regard to the proclamation process, in Section 21, the entire current instructional materials process is deleted and new language added. This new language essentially creates an evergreen situation where materials are currently reviewed as publishers submit their products. As I understand it, the Commissioner wants a reset of the cycle by starting with the English, language arts, and reading, and math. Currently, here is where we are in our process of instructional materials. We have issued Proclamation 2024. That would include science materials, personal financial literacy, and some career and technology courses. These samples are due to be filed within the next few weeks. Next would be the Math TEKS review, math instructional materials, and then social studies. The resetting will mean that the English, language arts, and math will be presented for review immediately through the Texas Resource Review, and districts may be used to buy funds in these two subjects. English language arts and reading was last purchased in 2017 for a cost of $1.1 billion. We're in the process of a phonics call, which will require more funds. If we do the reset and in a couple of years purchase language arts materials again, could be another $1 billion. And by that time, we would be close to the review of the English language arts TEKS, assuming that we still keep that ability to have that review. So that means within a 10-year period, the state might have spent over $3 billion on English language arts and reading materials, which personally as a taxpayer, I consider that irresponsible. Another problem with this is that the social studies materials would get pushed back again, and they've already been pushed back once. If we do away with the stability and predictability of the adoption cycles, publishers will be less likely to publish for Texas as they have in the past. An unintended consequence is that the quality of materials from a Texas perspective will likely decrease. The State Board of Education review and adoption cycle should not be replaced with a process that authorizes the commissioner to determine when and what subject and courses are reviewed. With regarding the open education resources, in reading the 58-page bill, most of the focus is on open education resources. As I know all of you know, instructional materials are a big very important to parents today. One of my concerns is that by definition and referred to in Section 11, 1-A, the definition of open education resources allows for free use, reuse, modification, and sharing with others. The term modification is very concerning to me as a state board member. Does the state board approve OER materials and then the districts can modify them? If so, what is the point of the approval?
Ms. Little, can you wrap it up?
Yes, ma'am. In closing, I would like to say that there are a lot of aspects of this bill that we like. However, there are other aspects of the bill that require closer scrutiny before you act. And Chair Ellis and members of the State Board are willing to work with you to get this bill the best for the students of Texas.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Pickering?
Yes, ma'am.
You do it in 3 minutes?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Thank you, Representative Allen. I'll be straight to the point. I'll modify what I was going to say. Dear Chairman Buckley and members of the Texas House of Representatives Public Education Committee, as Texas State Board Member of Education, District 7, I serve the residents of the following counties: Brazoria, Chambers, Fort Bend, Galveston, Hardin, Jasper, Jefferson, Liberty, Newton, Orange, Tyler, and a portion of Harris County. The constituents of these counties elected me to help ensure their children are provided an excellent education in accordance with state law. One of my duties as a member of the Texas State Board of Education is to review and adopt curriculum that is age appropriate and teaches Texas essential knowledge and skills. For too many children, curriculum being taught does not fulfill these requirements. First, we need to consider age appropriateness. If the content is not age appropriate, then children will not learn. The following 2 questions are from widely adopted Amplify curriculum. Do you think primogeniture is fair? Justify your answer with 3 supporting reasons. This assignment is from a 3rd grade workbook. The following question is from an assignment for 7-year-olds. Why is the War of 1812 often referred to as America's Second War for Independence? In your response, describe what caused the war and Great Britain's 3-part plan for defeating the United States. This is not appropriate for a 2nd grade student, nor is it a reasonable expectation for a 2nd grade teacher to convey these mature concepts to a 7-year-old. Additionally, many curriculums adopted by local ISDs only contain 50% of the TEKS adopted by the State Board of Education. House Bill 3 passed in the 81st legislature mandates State of Texas assessments of academic readiness test, commonly referred to as the STAR test, which is based in 100% TEKS. If students in school districts master the curriculum that is provided to them, which only contains 50% of the TEKS, the student at best will approaches academic readiness because of unalignment with our standards. Parents and teachers across the state are confused and frustrated when great students score poorly on STAR testing, but many school boards and administrators approve curriculum that does not align with Texas standards and sets our teachers and students up for failure. Lastly, we have curriculum in our schools that does not fulfill state law. Dr. Greg Bonin's bill, the Informed American Patriotism Act, which mandates students learn founding documents such as the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Federalist Papers, is left out of many national curriculums. The purpose of the bill is to increase students' knowledge of their country's and state's deepest and noblest purpose. Also, House Bill 4509 requires the teaching of the appreciation of the fundamental moral principles of our state and our national heritage in kindergarten through 12th grade. Another great piece of legislation passed by this esteemed body is the Celebrate Freedom Week. House Bill 708 in the 77th Ledge requires 3rd grade to 12th grade students to recite.
Can you wrap it up?
Yes, ma'am. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers, just powers, from the consent of the governor. Again, many curriculums available to school districts do not contain this mandated verbiage. These are just a few great examples of legislation passed by this esteemed body that are not included in many curriculums adopted around the state of Texas, and our children are the ones who are losing because of it. A Texas-developed, owned, and published curriculum approved by the elected State Board of Education will fulfill student learning expectations of the Texas legislature. Also, Texas curriculum will fulfill Article 7 of the Texas Constitution, which says we shall provide a general dissemination of knowledge to ensure the preservation of our liberties and our rights. God bless Texas. Thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you. You have a question?
One question. Ms. Little.
Yes.
Concerning the review and vetting of instructional materials, should the focus be on what is best for students so they have high-quality materials in the classroom, or what's convenient for textbook publishers?
Absolutely what's best for the students.
Okay. And is the change in the proclamation process and those the things that you implied in your testimony, is all that has all that been totally set in stone and worked out yet? I don't believe it has.
No, it hasn't, but I wanted to bring it to your
Let's not
attention.
represent that in a way.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
Okay.
We're about students and high-quality materials.
Absolutely.
We'll deal with the adults last, students first.
Absolutely.
Members, it looks like we will need to stop here for the morning. We have to be on the floor in exactly 4 minutes. Okay? There's no objection. The committee will stand at recess until the final adjournment, or recess until the House doing reading of the referral bills if permission is granted. The chair hears no objections. The Committee of Public Ed will stand at recess.